In this English lesson, you're going to listen to a story called The Uninvited Guest. And this is to practice your English listening skills. If you are watching on YouTube, then turn on the captions so that you can listen and read at the same time. And at the end of the story, we're going to explore some key terms that will help improve your English. My name is Jack from To Fluency. I'm really excited to read this story to you because I think it's a great way for you to improve your English. Be sure to check the description for the key terms from this story and listen to the end because the story, hopefully, is going to be very interesting to you. And also, we're going to explore those key terms so that you can learn new words and phrases. So, sit back or continue doing whatever you're doing, relax, and listen to The Uninvited Guest. Laura has spent all day preparing for the dinner party. She cleaned the apartment, arranged flowers on the table, and cooked a meal she hoped everyone would enjoy. Tonight was supposed to be a quiet, relaxing evening with close friends, a break from the usual busyness of the week. Her husband, James, was in the kitchen putting the final touches on dessert. Together, they made a great team when hosting. Their friends always appreciated the effort they put into creating a welcoming atmosphere. By 7:30, the guests began to arrive. Sarah and Tom, a couple they had known for years, were the first to step through the door. Then came Emily, Laura's best friend from university, who brought her new boyfriend Mark. The group greeted each other warmly, filling the apartment with chatter and laughter. Laura was just pouring the first round of drinks when the doorbell rang again. She frowned and looked at James. "Are we expecting someone else?" she asked. James shook his head. "No, maybe someone's at the wrong door?" Curious, Laura walked to the door and opened it. Her breath caught as she saw the man standing there. It was David. Someone from her past she hadn't seen in years. His face was familiar, with the same confident smile she remembered, but seeing him now felt completely unexpected. "David?" Laura said, her voice uncertain. "What are you doing here?" David smiled, his eyes warm but unreadable. "I was in the area and thought I'd stop by. Hope I'm not intruding." Laura hesitated, feeling a knot form in her stomach. Before she could respond, James appeared behind her, his voice curious. "Who is it?" "It's David," Laura said, stepping aside as James moved to the doorway. David extended his hand with a friendly grin. "James, good to see you again," David said, his tone casual. James hesitated briefly before shaking his hand. "David, this is unexpected." David laughed lightly. "I know. Sorry for the surprise. I was hoping to catch up with you both." Before Laura could gather her thoughts, Sarah and Tom appeared in the hallway, curious about the new arrival. "Who's this?" Tom asked, smiling as he stepped forward. "An old friend," David replied smoothly. "David, nice to meet you." Introductions were made, and soon enough, David was in the living room with the others. Laura exchanged a glance with James, who shrugged slightly, as if to say, "What can we do?" As evening went on, David's charm and humour filled the room. He shared stories from his recent travels, making everyone laugh. But beneath the surface, Laura felt tension. James kept glancing at her, and Emily seemed to study David a little too closely. There was history here, something only Laura and James fully understood. During dinner, the conversation shifted to the past. David, never one to miss an opportunity, brought up a trip he and Laura had taken years ago. "Do you remember that cafe by the river, Laura?" he asked, his tone light. "We spent hours there, just talking." Laura felt her face flush. She knew James was listening carefully. "Yes, I remember," she replied cautiously, trying to steer the conversation in another direction. It was a long time ago. James set his foot down, his tone calm but firm. That's right, a very long time ago. David smiled, his gaze steady. Funny how some memories stick with you though, isn't it? The room grew quiet for a moment. Emily, sensing the shift in mood, quickly changed the subject, asking about everyone's holiday plans. The tension eased slightly, but the atmosphere wasn't the same as before. Later that evening, as the party wound down, Laura excused herself to the kitchen to take a moment alone. She leaned against the counter, taking a deep breath. The evening had taken a turn she hadn't anticipated, and she felt like she'd been walking on a tightrope all night. James soon joined her, his expression concerned. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Laura nodded. "I didn't know he'd show up. I'm sorry." "It's not your fault," James said, his voice steady. "It's just surprising, that's all." Before they could say more, David appeared in the doorway, leaning casually against the frame. "Everything all right in here?" Laura forced a smile. "Yes, we're just tidying up." David nodded, his gaze lingering for a moment before he spoke. "Thanks for letting me join tonight. It was great seeing you both." James gave a polite nod. "Safe travels back." David looked at Laura one last time. "Take care, Laura," he said, his tone softer now. As David walked out of the apartment and the door closed behind him, Laura let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. She and James returned to the living room where their remaining friends were chatting and laughing as if nothing had happened. Laura caught James' eye from across the room. He gave her a small, reassuring smile. She returned it, feeling a sense of calm. The evening hadn't gone as planned, but together they had handled it. The past might have walked through their door, but it was the present and the people who mattered most that stayed. In this story, we explained several key phrases and words that help convey suspense, tension, and emotional depth. So what we're going to do now is go through 7 of them to understand their meanings and how they can be used in different contexts. And then once we do this, it's a good idea to go back and listen to the story again. The first phrase is a knot form in her stomach. A knot form in her stomach. So Laura feels a knot form in her stomach when she sees David at the door, meaning she experiences sudden anxiety or unease. This phrase describes a physical reaction to stress or nervousness. For example, I felt a knot in my stomach before the exam, or she had a knot in her stomach when she realized she'd made a mistake. The second phrase is, good to see you again. Good to see you again. David says this to James, a polite and neutral way of greeting someone after some time apart. The phrase is commonly used in formal or informal contexts. For example, it's good to see you again after all these years, or good to see you again. How have you been? The third phrase is never one to miss an opportunity. Never one to miss an opportunity. David is described as never one to miss an opportunity, meaning he always takes advantage of chances to say or do something. This phrase can be used both positively and negatively. For example, she's never one to miss an opportunity to help others. Or he never misses an opportunity to show off his knowledge. The fourth phrase is stick with you. Stick with you. David mentions that some memories stick with you, meaning they remain in your mind for a long time. And this is often due to emotional impact. For example, the kindness of strangers during my trip really stuck with me, or that lesson stuck with him and shaped how he handled challenges. The fifth phrase that I imagine a lot of you don't know is walking on a tightrope. Walking on a tightrope. Now, you might have something similar in your own language, because in the story, Laura feels like she's walking on a tightrope throughout the evening, meaning she's in a delicate situation where she has to be very careful because David had been there. This phrase is often used to describe situations requiring balance and caution. For example, managing the team while avoiding conflicts felt like walking on a tightrope. Or she was walking on a tightrope, trying not to upset anyone. We've got 2 more phrases to go, and the next one is lingering gaze. Lingering gaze. So David's lingering gaze adds to the tension, meaning his look, his stare, lasted longer than usual, suggesting feelings or intentions. So this phrase is often used to describe a look that implies deeper emotion. For example, his lingering gaze told her everything he didn't say. Or the lingering gaze between them hinted at something unspoken. And the last phrase is, let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. So we've got the past perfect here, but Laura let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding after David left, meaning that she felt relieved after being tense for so long. And it's often used to describe a moment of release from stress or anxiety. For example, when the test was over, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, or she'd finally let out a breath as a situation resolved. So that's the story. Those are the 7 phrases. Again, go back to listen to the story a few more times, or at least once, so that you can really understand and get the best listening practice you can. Go to the description to get key English learning resources, courses, my recommended tools, etc. If you're listening to this as a podcast, then go back to past episodes. If you're on YouTube, explore the different videos we have made over the last 10 years. And one last thing, if you could share this with a friend, I would greatly appreciate it. It helps the podcast grow and it reaches more people. Thanks again for listening, and we will speak to you soon. Bye for now.